Is Brian Kelly changing his roster building strategy? Let's talk about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. The transfer portal window is closed. And with LSU adding Bernard Gooden and AJ Halsey in the spring portal window, that makes 18 portal additions for LSU. Now, 23 players have left LSU in this portal cycle, both the December and spring portal windows combined. Every Tuesday, we have a chance to visit with Shea Dixon from On3, the Bengal Tiger. I should say every week we have a chance to visit with Shea Dixon from On3, the Bengal Tiger. And most of the time, Shea and I talk recruiting, high school recruiting. But it's at a point right now where the LSU coaching staff is on the road and they're doing really gangbusters. They're doling out offers in advance of all the elite camps that are coming up next month in June. So they're doing work out there on the road. But this was a good time to stop and assess what LSU did here in the transfer portal. And my sort of overview on this is that I think Brian Kelly this maybe is signaling a change in the strategy of how Brian Kelly wants to build a roster. And we've talked about this, our everydayers know it, but I'm about to present to you the perspective of someone who disagrees with me. And I always think it's good to get other opinions, and especially from people that you trust and respect, like Shea. And my thought has been, if Brian Kelly came to Baton Rouge and was pretty transparent in saying he wanted to build through the high school ranks and develop talent, and then supplement in the transfer portal. So as to say, you're going to have guys leave. Well, when that happens, you go grab a player here or there, be selective to get top tier guys that can help supplement your roster, but you're not going to build your roster through the transfer portal per se. And I've always given you the counter example, which is Lane Kiffin, who really has built his rosters at Ole Miss through the transfer portal. No greater example than this past year when you had Walter Nolan and Princely Amon Mielen and Trey Amos and Chris Paul, and up and down the roster on both sides of the ball, you had a whole bunch of transfers. Trey Harris, that their roster was built on transfers. Jackson Dart was a transfer. And that's okay. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying there were different approaches. And I think the answer, as it so often does in life, lies somewhere in between. But remember, in his first year, Brian Kelly signed 15 transfers. His second year, 13. And then last year, 9. Well, now, all of a sudden, you look at LSU in this transfer cycle, doubling that number, going to 18. And not just bodies, but impact dudes all over. Like, if you were here on the previous episode, and I encourage you to go check it out if you missed it, I ran through who I think will be the starters against Clemson in week 1. And when you go up and down that list, you're talking about an awful lot of dudes that are very likely transfers that are going to be starters. Mansour Delane, Tamarcus Cooley, AJ Halsey, guys like Jack Pyburn. I think Bernard Gooden is going to start. Braylon Moore, Josh Thompson, Bauer Sharp. I mean, half of your 22 starters to open the season, Mansour Delane, are very likely going to be transfers. So that's not exactly building through the high school ranks. That's kind of splitting the difference right down the middle. So I asked Shea if this example of going and getting 18 players out of the transfer portal, impact guys that you're expecting to start for you right away, if this is signaling a change in the strategy for Brian Kelly and LSU and how they're approaching the portal, and Shea does not agree with me.
No, I don't. I think we're overlooking in that specific to exactly what you're talking about, there could be oversight in truly where the roster was at when they took over. Did they improve it over time? Yes, but it's still turning over every year. So did you want to ride into this year developing E.J. Woodland, Ashton Stamps, Deshaun Spears, all of these guys in the secondary who are your promising younger guys, Michael Turner? I mean, you could continue to name them. Or did you also want to develop them but say, hey, look, we've got Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback. We've got all these other pieces in place. If we have the ability to go out there and make the roster better with many guys who are 1 year left, 2 years left, whatever it might be, and we can retain those other guys and develop them, then we're not continuing to take these lumps that come with, hey, look, we want to be heavy in high school and development and supplement portal. I do think he probably wants to be in that, let's add around 8 to 10 portal guys a year. But for me, I think, and anybody who looks at the roster, when you've got Nuss and a healthy Perkins and Weeks and your Aaron Anderson and these guys are in their final years, and you've got some pieces here and there on the defensive line that are getting kind of into the prime of their careers. Don McKinley's, Dave Relaford's, where they really get their shot. Do you go out there and grab maybe boost up a little bit more on each side than you normally would? I think the answer is yes. Look, probably we can answer it by, hey, how much did you think the team should be better? They took a portal punter last year and went out and just took one this year again to replace that one who didn't play as much because he split 50-50 time with the other punter on roster. So I think it just became one of those things when they, like I said, win-loss, you take a step back. How can we still develop, not lose a ton of guys that we want to retain and develop, but also make us better to capitalize on this next year where you saw it with Tennessee. You can go 10-2, not make the SEC title, and go to the playoffs. If the playoffs are the goal and this is your most talented roster, then wins should be within reach. So I think this is probably a culmination of all of that. I think we see that number come down a good bit if they're continuing to be able to retain at the rate they have.
Okay. It's a fascinating conversation, but I would also submit this. After the 2025 season, Garrett Nussmeier's gone. Aaron Anderson, Chris Hilton, Nick Anderson, Berrien Brown, Bauer Sharp, Braylon Moore, Josh Thompson, all these guys are gone. Xavier Thomas. That's just on the offensive side. And you can look at the defensive side, the three defensive ends you brought in. Pyburn, Patrick Payton, Jamari Butler, all gone. Jacobian Guillory is going to be gone. Bernard Gooden's going to be gone. Mansour Delane's going to be gone. Harold Perkins is going to be gone. Whit Weeks could be gone after 3 years. West Weeks is going to be gone. Tamarcus Cooley very likely will go pro. AJ Halsey's out of eligibility. You're losing all your starters. It's the catch-22. When you go bring in all of these starters that are 1 year mercenaries, after that 1 year, they're all gone. And now you're replacing almost your entire roster. So what do? You're effectively back in the same spot you were when Brian Kelly took over. And he went out and he got Jaden Daniels and he got Miles Frazier and he got all the receivers out of the portal and the DBs like Jarek Bernard Converse and Mekhi Gardner and Greg Brooks and Joe Fouché and guys that could come in and immediately be impact guys for him because you had to, because your roster was so decimated. Well, after 2025, your roster is going to be decimated again. So do you have the growing pains in 26 of starting a lot of young guys to get depth? Or do you go in the portal and get another 15 to 20 guys that are going to be immediate impact guys to help you bridge that gap? I think that's the recurring cycle you're going to be in. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Shea is right. Like maybe this is an outlier of a year just because of how it all falls. Maybe. But I can look to December and see a world, or hopefully January, and see a world where when the LSU season ends in mid-January, holding up a big trophy, that all these guys are going to be gone and you're going to be desperate to go back into the portal to get guys that could be immediate impact guys. Fascinating conversation, one that's not going away. Shea did also give some thoughts on what happened here with 18 in and 23 out. We'll continue this conversation next. Locked in LSU, your team every day. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Plus, posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, you can have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. It's cost-effective growth. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. So the portal window is closed and the future will be what it is, and that'll be a conversation for another time. But as we assess this portal window and this whole portal cycle, I wanted to ask Shea his thoughts on that with the 18 players in, the 23 out, and sort of an assessment of the roster now with such massive turnover both in and out.
I think that the assessment of the departures can obviously be viewed. Are they searching for playing time they would not have found here, first and foremost? And yes, would you love to keep every kid and develop them that you feel good about? Sure. I don't think that LSU, when compared to many other teams, out there, and certainly some of the upper echelon teams, lost players to the portal that they did not want to lose. And LSU didn't have that. And that also goes for the NFL draft. Garrett Nussmeier is coming back. They got Harold Perkins back. I know he had to juggle the entire injury thing, but there's also guys who, don't let it fool you, could have been these agents get calls from everybody, and they could enter the portal, and you're thinking, well, you would have started next year. Why'd you hit the portal? Well, this team was offering me a bigger role and more money, whatever it might be. There was none of that. So I think departure-wise, by and large, more than 80, 90%, correct me if you feel differently, are guys who just wanted to go and play elsewhere. And then I think on the contrary, unlike a year ago when they added a much smaller number and still didn't have a huge hit rate on, instant impact guys, this time they get 18 guys. I can point to double-digit of them and say, that guy will start or will play a pretty big role on the team. And on paper, that's just what it is. I kind of joked with Maddie B about it on our podcast. I'm not trying to say this is like that off-season Matt where it's like, where I just said, oh, well, they didn't lose really anybody that's going to hurt them, and they only gained all these guys that are going to help them. It sounds like the old, reports out of the weight room or everybody's, maxed out on the bench now. Nobody dropped a ball in spring practice. Everybody looks as good as they ever have. I just mean purely on paper, what they did in the first two windows, coupled with retention of the roster, I didn't see any missteps, and it's been well documented and talked about, and you've done a good job covering it, and everybody in the local media has, of this kind of push they put into NIL, organizing, things beyond the field, and then being able to go out and execute coming off of this season where in the win and loss, chart, you took a step backwards.
When I was hearing Shea talk about not losing any players that were impact guys, he's not wrong. Now, you did lose CJ Daniels, but you are deep and incredibly talented at receiver. You lost Sage Ryan, who played a lot of football for you over 4 years, but you have upgraded at safety. That's undeniable. I could look at someone like Shelton Sampson, who was a high 4-star, 5-star coming out of high school, was still a very high upside that hadn't really realized his potential yet. You would love to have retained Shelton Sampson. No doubt. You would love for him to still be on the team. But Nick Anderson, Berrien Brown, Destin Hill, all three guys you brought in are better options today than Shelton Sampson. I would have loved to have retained Ricky Collins. Local guy, high upside, has been in the program. Like, you would love to retain Ricky Collins to see what he could become. But Michael Van Buren has started 9 SEC games. He's a better option in 2025 as a backup for Garrett Nussmeier than Ricky Collins. Like, that's just objectively true. And so when you look at the players that you lost, again, like Shea joked about it, but this isn't meant to be all the players you got are awesome and all the players you lost weren't going to play anyway. But that's kind of how it is. I mean, the 23 players you lost are Landon Ibieta, Jalen Lee, Bernard Causey, Kimo Makanayoli, JVR Suggs, AJ Swan, Jair Brown, Shelton Sampson, JK Johnson, Kamorian Pimpton, Ricky Collins, Sage Ryan, Kylan Jackson, Xavier Atkins, CJ Daniels, Jordan Allen, Deshaun Womack, Nathan Dybert, David Kensey, Dylan Battle, Javen Nicholas, John Emery, DeMarion Johnson. Of all the names I mentioned, who was going to be an impact guy for LSU in 2025 if they had stayed? That's really the question. Now, when you flip it around and you run through the 18 names of guys that came in, they're all expected to be guys that immediately contribute on a team that's expected to push for a playoff berth and a national championship. So, yeah, I mean, I think you go 1 for 1 and you realize at receiver, Landon Ibieta, Javen Nicholas, Shelton Sampson are out. Nick Anderson, Berrien Brown, and Destin Hill are in. It's an upgrade across the board. Mentioned quarterback. You could look at defensive line where DeMarion Johnson and Jalen Lee are out. Well, you brought in Bernard Gooden. Like, that's an upgrade. And Sadir Mitchell, that's an upgraded defensive tackle. We can talk about defensive ends. I mean, all across the board. Cornerback, Bernard Causey's out. Well, Mansour Delane is in. That's a dramatic upgrade. If you just go 1 for 1 position by position, yes, the guys you lost were guys that weren't expected to be impact guys in 2025, and the guys you brought in are all expected to be impact guys in 2025. Again, my biggest question, I have 2. Number 1, is this a new strategy for LSU, taking upwards of 18, 20 transfer portal guys? It's 1. And number 2 is LSU in the same situation next year because all of these one-year mercenaries are gone, and so you're turning over your whole roster again? It may be the case, but the question will become, can you continue to turn over your roster year after year after year? It's almost like what John Calipari did at Kentucky all those years when he kept recruiting one-and-dones. He had nothing but 5 McDonald's All-Americans every year. They'd all go pro after 1 year, and he's turning over his whole roster every year. And he kept winning. Now, only won 1 national championship with a lot of failures in March, but the point is they were always in contention because he always had the best team. And if you're willing to spend and you're willing to attack the portal the way LSU did this year, continuing forward, you're still going to have a really talented roster. So all that, those are questions will get answered in time, but the truth across the board, that's undeniable. LSU's roster is the best that Brian Kelly's had since he's been here. Now the onus is on him and his coaching staff to make sure they go compete at a championship level and get LSU in the playoff here in 2020. Now, the LSU baseball Tigers are always expected to be not only in regionals, but in Omaha. There's a new projection from D1 Baseball for the field of 64. We'll tell you where they have LSU, and you'll hear from Mark Etheridge from D1 about why they have LSU there and what the Tigers need to do to lock up a national seed. That's next on Locked on LSU, your team every day. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. So you look at which players are showing up in the big moments. My goodness, watching the Knicks and Celtics in game 1, the Celtics blowing a 20-point lead, missing 45 threes. They opened the door for Jalen Brunson. If you would have live bet the Knicks in that game when they were down 20, you'd be rolling in the dough today. So check it out and make sure you capitalize on that bonus bet opportunity. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. There are 2 weekends remaining in SEC play, and then, of course, we'll be off to the SEC tournament. And on Memorial Day, we'll learn the field of 64. Well, our friends over at D1 Baseball do such an awesome job. And they put out this week their projected field of 64. And a little bit of a spoiler, there were 5 SEC teams earning national seeds and 14 SEC teams in the field. Only Missouri and South Carolina left out. Yes, it is an increased field of 16 SEC teams. You've added Texas and Oklahoma, who are both going to be in the NCAA tournament in the field of 64 in regional field. So that's naturally going to buoy those numbers. But my goodness, is it impressive? And in this projection from D1 Baseball, they do have LSU as the number 4 national seed. Texas, Arkansas, Florida State, and then LSU 4th. I asked Mark Etheridge from D1 Baseball why they settled on LSU as the number 4 national seed today.
I think behind Texas, and we felt like Arkansas was pretty much the second team. And then after that, there was a big clump of teams. And then you're trying to decide, what do you like, what do you don't? We feel like whoever wins the ACC is going to get, a really lofty seed as well. And that's why we went with Florida State is our pick there at 3. And then after that, it was LSU. And I think that the big selling point on them is that with Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson, that looks to me, and I think the rest of the group agreed with me, that's the best 1-2 punch on the mound in the country. And when you've got that sort of upside, and you go into the postseason where you're not using as many pitchers, we really like where they're going to be. Then when you look at what they've been able to accomplish, some big wins. I know other than the Auburn weekend, LSU's been pretty consistent, and I didn't feel any worse about them losing at A&M, who's really playing well, than if they'd won. I feel the same. It was just, Cowan's been really good all year. He made one bad pitch, and boy, did Caden Sorrell take advantage of it. Yeah. And that was really the game and the series. And so it could have really gone either way. So I didn't, I feel the same way about them had he struck him out there.
So that's encouraging. To not be dinged for the road series loss against A&M, but it's also worth noting this weekend against Arkansas coming up is just a massive opportunity, as D1 Baseball currently has Arkansas their number 2 national seed. They're 5th in the country in RPI. It's a massive opportunity for LSU with Arkansas coming in. So the big question is, with 6 games to play, what does LSU need to do to lock up a national seed? And oh, by the way, what if things go the other way? What would it take for LSU to fall out of national seed contention?
Well, they do not control their own destiny unless they go crazy and maybe win 5 games, something like that. Other teams could come catch them if somebody else got hot and then had a conference tournament run. But what works in their advantage is a lot of the contenders are in the SEC. Mm-hmm. So somebody's going to lose in Hoover. And I do feel like you could get to, say if LSU goes 3-3, they lose to Arkansas, they lose 2 out of 3, but then win 2 of 3 at South Carolina, finish 3-3. It's kind of a status quo, but I do feel like that would leave them vulnerable to a couple other teams, maybe an ACC, maybe an SEC, somebody else making a run and kind of crowding them out. Maybe you got 9 teams for 8 spots. That would really be the way it would go. Certainly, if they went 2-4 and lost some games in Columbia, that would that could hurt. But I really feel like LSU, it's theirs to lose on barring something like that happening.
Bottom line is, go win your next 2 weekends, and you're going to lock up a national seed. Win a home series against Arkansas and a road series against South Carolina, which currently has 5 SEC wins on the season. Go 4-2 in your remaining 6. You'll be at 19-11 in the conference. You will have had series wins. You'll have a road sweep against Oklahoma, a home series win against Arkansas, a home series win against Tennessee. You will be a national seed. And I'll continue to hammer this home. This format, the super regional format, came into play in 1999. LSU has never, not once, ever advanced to the College World Series when they've had to travel for a super regional. They've lost home super regionals. They lost to Stony Brook. They lost to Coastal Carolina. They lost to Florida State. They've lost home super regionals, but they have never advanced on the road. So the clearest path to get to Omaha is through Alex Box Stadium. How do you do that? You lock up a national seed. You have 6 games remaining, 3 against Arkansas, 3 at South Carolina. Go 4-2 in those 6 games, and you'll lock up a national seed regardless of what happens in Hoover, and your path to Omaha will run through the box. And oh, by the way, with the 2 pitchers that Mark Etheridge from D1 Baseball, not Matt Moscona, who covers LSU, Mark Etheridge from D1 Baseball said is the best 1-2 punch in the country. If you have the best 2 starting pitchers 1-2 punch in the country, and another team has to come to Alex Box Stadium in June, massive advantage for the Tigers. Got to take care of it over these next 2 weeks. Of course, we'll follow it here on Locked On LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts. So please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.